If you were to buy just one fund and try to retire off of it, which fund should it actually be?
It's a little clickbaity to me.
That you can actually just invest in one fund and retire off of it.
I told you guys I had concerns with this video.
Oftentimes, that's why I see people usually writing into me with 5 or 10 ETFs within their portfolio, but sometimes that's not a great thing.
He's right. Sometimes it's not a great thing. There's a lot of good financial advice out there, which is what makes the internet a cool place. But there's also some advice that I would not trust and I would not let anyone retire early off of or recommend, because I don't really let them. I'm the one guiding them on the decision. But I want to make sure that if someone's retiring early, where they might need income for 40 or 50 plus years, that they go, yeah, I didn't overlook anything. I'm not going to run the risk of running out. And there's a few things online that make me cringe that I want to go, oh, I just want to tell people, yes, parts of this is true and parts of this, please do not listen to. So I'm going to walk you through how I think through early retirement planning after we hear from one of the biggest YouTubers on personal finance, Humphrey Yang. Now, if you don't know Humphrey, I really do resonate with some of his style. You can see here he was a former financial advisor. He held the Series 7 and Series 66. For those of you that don't know, I also held both of those, but I'm a certified financial planner. And a Series 7 or Series 66, this allows you to sell an investment. So when I started in the industry, I was at a big fancy company with the parking and the lights, and I didn't like it. But like him, I imagine he's like, look, we're just selling products. We don't actually do holistic financial planning. So some of the things he talks about I really like, but he is not a certified financial planner, which means it's not saying, and I'll tell this to a lot of people, I'll say, how many MDs would you never let touch your body? Because there's a lot of doctors I don't want touching me, but that's like, I'm not going to go to anyone if they're not an MD. So that's where like the conversation begins. Now, Humphrey, I would trust more than a lot of certified financial planners as well. So I'm not trying to dig on Humphrey. There's a few things he discusses I really like, but a few things he discusses I don't love. And I'm going to discuss what those are in today's video. Just so you know some more insight as to my channel, you can see here I like some of these. 5 signs when you're oversaving for retirement. I'm not going to do kind of viral content of look inside a $27 million mansion or, you know, here's the best new credit card or some of these things I just don't think are ultra applicable to an early retirement. So he has over 1 million subscribers. I don't really have a goal of having 1 million subscribers. I'd rather have 20,000 subscribers of people like you who go, I want to retire early. I've got between 500 to $30 million, 500,000 to 30 million. I need guidance on how do I retire early. So very clear as to kind of what my goal is and who I want to help. He's trying to help everyone. I just want to give you some guidance in case you've watched his videos here. So ultimately, I want to make sure you retire early with confidence. Now, the video we're going to be reviewing is can you retire off of just one ETF? Let's see.
One fund in your portfolio, theoretically, it could be possible, and if it is, then why does the investment community always turn to popular investment styles like the 2-fund portfolio or the 3-fund portfolio? Today, I'm examining the merits for having just one fund in your portfolio, because if it is reasonable, then it might actually be a simple approach for many of you out there.
I believe in simplicity. Too many people come to me and they have 40 mutual funds or 100 different stocks, and that's unnecessary. But having one ETF, what he's saying is, can you retire off just one ETF? You can. So he's right, but you'd be leaving a lot of money on the table. And you're going to see what I mean in just a little bit. But what I can tell you is there's a reason people diversify. And if you want to retire on one ETF because of a dividend approach, I need you to ask yourself, why is this company paying me a dividend? What if this company did not pay me a dividend and instead reinvested it? Could that make me more money? It's called total return. Think about it like real estate. Let's assume you have $1 million property. That's the value. And it throws off $100,000 a year of rental income. Just a hypothetical. Well, are we really taking home $100,000? Probably not, because there's a roof that leaks and a property manager and different stuff going on. Let's assume you take home $80,000. So home's worth $1 million, rental property, throws off $80,000 a year. Awesome. That $80,000, that represents an 8% dividend. But then there's also growth of that property. Maybe that $1 million goes up in value by 2%. So 8% dividend, 2% appreciation of the property, 10% total return. What I see too often is people go, I want the ultra dividend approach in retirement. I like dividends, but I don't want to only pick dividend companies that sacrifice so much growth. What if you had a real estate property that had a 9% dividend, which sounds awesome, but the home went down in value every single year, meaning the stock's not doing well, but the dividend is really attractive. Well, all of a sudden you might be losing way more value. So I like dividends more when you are closer to retirement versus early on in your career. I want you to have less dividends. I'd rather a company like Tesla say, we're not going to pay dividends, we're going to reinvest it and try to grow like crazy, which might make you way more money. So just want to make sure that's clear.
If we were to buy just one fund and try to retire off of it, which fund should it actually be? So we're going to go over that today, as well as some of the
It's a little clickbaity to me of, hey, what if we just try to retire off one fund? Is that possible? I want you to know I'm a certified financial planner. I've never seen anyone retire off of one fund.
common pitfalls that investors will run into when trying to explore this strategy. Alright, so to give you a little context, the 3-fund portfolio usually consists of 3 broad-based index funds that track the overall American stock market, the overall international stock market, and the total US bond market. It's typically considered one of the gold standards of investment approaches, especially according to the Bogleheads investment community online, because of its broad diversification and simple approach. The 2-fund portfolio is really similar. It consists of 1 stock fund as well as 1 fixed income fund.
When they're talking about stock funds or bond funds, they're saying, should I have 60% in a Vanguard equity fund and maybe 40% in a Vanguard bond fund? So a total of 100%. And the risk, if you only have a stock fund or a bond fund, is, well, what if bonds are not doing well? You might have to sell those bonds at a loss, and we need income. Where's it going to come from? Well, we don't have anywhere else to pull from. So I'll explain why this 1-fund portfolio idea might be a little odd.
Fund, and so that way you can choose US equities or international equities within your stock fund, or a little bit of both, as well as you have the fixed income side. Either way, a 2-fund portfolio is also going to be diversified as well, but it has 1 fewer fund than the 3-fund portfolio, so it is a little bit more simple. And then, my friends, there is the 1-fund portfolio. That's where you just go all in on 1 fund. And this seems a little bit too simple and straightforward for newer investors as well as advanced investors out there, because they think to themselves, man, only 1 fund? It seems a little bit too easy. Usually the assumption is with investing that it's very difficult and complicated, and oftentimes that's why I see people usually writing into me with 5 or 10 ETFs within their portfolio, but sometimes that's not a great thing. Now, I am happy to...
He's right. Sometimes it's not a great thing. But this 1-fund portfolio, I'll give you an example of one right now that you might even own. It's called a target date fund. And a target date fund, and the issue with 1-fund portfolios, which, Humphrey, you're not the first person to bring this to me, is they don't often go deep enough, and it's cookie cutter. And here's what I mean. If I own a target date fund called the 2025 Vanguard Target Date Fund because I want to retire next year, and my neighbor owns the target date fund because they want to retire next year, but I want to spend $10,000 a month in retirement and they want to spend $5,000 a month in retirement. Well, that's very different, and we should have very different investments. The target date funds in your 401k are a good way to not screw anything up. You're not going to get crazy returns. You're not going to go down like crazy. Now, there's going to be more fluctuation if I pick a 2070 retirement fund versus a 2025 retirement fund because there's more equities. You don't need that money next year. The target date funds, they don't know your estate planning goals. They don't know how many kids you have. They don't know how much you want to spend. They generally know when you might need the income, but they don't know that you also have other investments. It's not talking to enough things. It is cookie cutter.
To report that you can actually just invest in 1 fund and retire off of it. Now, which one of these funds should you actually invest into? There are a few candidates for selection. Typical candidates for a 1-fund portfolio include choices.
So I told you guys I had concerns with this video. I just brought up the target date fund example. That's the first one he just brought up.
Such as target date funds. Those are the ones that are usually in your retirement accounts. You can also choose a singular ETF that has a mix of...
You can choose a singular ETF. There are many out there. There's one called VTI. There's one called VOO. There's SCHD. There's a lot of different ticker symbols for different investments. But the issue I see is, what if you retire and that fund is down? Let's call it 10% because markets are just down 10%. You're going to have to sell something to be able to generate income. You're going to have to sell that fund at a loss. And if you said, I have large US large caps, over here. So like the S&P 500, and small caps or small cap value or international funds over here, and US is up, but international is down. Well, you might go, maybe I'm going to not sell what's down and realize a loss. Maybe I take from the US large caps that have done well, and then it might flip. And now you might want to pull from this when it's done well. So now you're not having to sell things at a loss because you have diversification. Listen to what he says here about this one fund.
He'll tell you what I personally would do if it were me. If I were choosing one fund to go with and I was on the younger side, I would probably just choose VTI. The returns are about the same as VOO, plus you get the added diversification of having small caps in the mix, and so the total holdings of VTI are 3,717 stocks.
So 3,717 stocks. VTI is a total stock market ETF that is 100% equities. Now, if you're going to retire and you want to retire next year and markets go down 40% and you now have $1 million right now, and now you look in your account and there's $600,000, that won't be a good feeling. So for most of you, a VTI is not a good fit. It depends on where you're at in life and the stage that you're experiencing. What investments could you possibly support? I'm going to show you an example of what I would recommend in just a second. Now, before I do, here's one thing he says that I do agree with. So you can see here on my screen, he talks about paralysis by analysis. He goes, so many investors have thousands of funds to choose from. There's so much market noise saying, what should we do? That when you have all these choices, it's harder to choose. So it's better to just choose one, because if not, you just won't invest at all. And there are so many people missing out on so much money because they don't know what to do. What he's trying to do is say, look, I want you to get started on investing. Could you do just one ETF? Maybe. Is it optimal? No, but you could do it. Is it the best thing ever? No, but I often will tell even my partner, fiance now, when we're at the grocery store, I go, look, I know there's 6 different options for eggs. There's pasture raised and free range and cage free. And look, we just need some eggs. So we've got to pick one here. And they're like, well, we haven't done enough research. How do we know which one's the right one? So I'm just using eggs as an example, but I want to make sure you guys aren't doing the paralysis by analysis. So he basically goes on to summarize the rest of the video. You could have VTI, which is the total stock market. You could have QQQ, which is just, you can see the NASDAQ 100, so those tech stocks. And he's summarizing, when it comes to investing, ultimately, I want you to take action. And too many people fail to do so because they're stressed by all the options out there. Now, let me show you an example of how I would approach retirement planning. So this is a real portfolio on my screen right here of someone who has a 401k. Now, you can see here, have 4 funds, not 3, not 2, not 1. They have 4 funds. And this person is retired, and this is inside their 401k. They have this T. Rowe Price fund and a ClearBridge fund and a BlackRock and Fidelity. And I said, what if you did use Vanguard? What if you even used one of the investments Humphrey just recommended? But what if you have way more diversification? And the reason for this is I want you guys to think about this like baseball, the sport, okay? So if you have everything in VTI or a large portion in VTI, which is what Humphrey just recommended, the risk is if this does really well, you might have awesome returns. But if it doesn't do well, there's a big risk where I need to send you income. And if you don't have any small or very few mid-sized companies, it's difficult to create retirement income. So he's unintentionally or intentionally trying to hit a triple or a home run. I don't need someone with $2 million to hit a triple or a home run. I need them to have lifetime income. I don't want them to necessarily try to get 20, 30, 40% returns. They don't need that. Is it nice? Of course, but what's the risk? And is it worth having 2 million become 1 million or 2 million become 1.8 when markets are down? And when you're in retirement, I need this income to last forever. So what I recommend for my clients is consistent singles and doubles. That is the approach I'm taking. Now, let me be clear. I want you to make lots and lots of money, but I want you to save on taxes. I want withdrawal to be prioritized, meaning which account we pull from. I want healthcare to be considered heavily. So when I'm talking about retirement planning, I want more of a diverse approach. And like Humphrey, I don't believe that you need a ton of funds to do it. You might want 6 funds to do it, just as an example. Now, this portfolio, I don't recommend often for people. This is just showing an apples to apples 100% Vanguard equity portfolio. I would choose different funds, and you'd want it to be specific to your strategy. But this is just a sample as to how I would approach this. If you've made it this far and you're looking for more investing guidance and tips and strategies to optimize, you want to go into way more detail, you want to play around with the same software I use for my clients to retire early, you can check that out inside of my Early Retirement Academy. You get access to the same software. It goes really deep. Find out when you can retire. Find out when work is optional. Run your own Roth conversion projections. Understand insurance and education and Social Security. Understand all aspects of your estate planning. Go into real detail regarding an optimal early retirement approach. That's why I love doing this. So hopefully this video was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time.